That's what my stepmother, Vanessa Crow, told me at 11:47 p.m. on the very first night I slept in the $5.6 million beachfront estate I had spent 12 years working toward. Every cent earned by me. And before I could even respond, she added almost casually, "If that's a problem, you're free to stay somewhere else." Not them. Me. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. But I smiled. Because in that moment, I stopped thinking about what they were taking and started thinking about what I was going to take back. What Vanessa didn't realize was this: that call didn't just cross a line, it set something in motion she wouldn't be able to stop. And the welcome I prepared for her? It involved 220 guests, a ballroom stage, and one sealed manila envelope that would end everything. But the channel, and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm always curious how far these stories travel. My name is Bianca Riley. I'm 34 years old, and I live in San Diego, California. Let me take you back to March 2025. The week I walked away from my career and believed, for the first time, that I was finally free. My mother died when I was 17, ovarian cancer. Diagnosed in April, gone by September. 5 months. That was all the time I had before the one person who loved me unconditionally simply disappeared from my life. My father, Darren Riley, was a well-respected real estate attorney in San Diego's legal circle. He coped the only way he knew how, by working until he didn't have to feel anything. 2 years later, he married Vanessa Crow. At first she was kind, attentive, thoughtful. At the time, I ignored the quiet things people said about her. Small kind that should have been warnings, but never quite became one. She brought homemade desserts to Sunday dinners and called me sweetheart in a way that felt real. Or at least, I thought it was. But 6 months after the wedding, the sweetness disappeared. And so did she. It started small. Vanessa suggested I move out of my childhood bedroom, the one with the window seat my mother had built, so Chloe Mercer, her daughter from a previous marriage, could turn it into a proper dressing room. I looked at my father, waiting for him to say something. He just squeezed my shoulder. "It's just a room, kiddo." But it was never just a room. By Christmas a few years later, I wasn't even in the family photo. Vanessa arranged everyone in front of the fireplace, adjusting details, fixing collars. And somehow, when I walked in, there was no space left. "Oh," she said lightly, straightening Chloe's sleeve. "I thought you didn't want to be in it." I paid for my own college, a full scholarship, plus 2 part-time jobs, one at a bookstore, one tutoring statistics. Chloe went to a private university in Santa Barbara, fully funded by my father. When I asked him once why things were different, he looked confused. Vanessa answered instead, "You've always preferred being independent." That was her favorite line. "I'm not being cruel, I'm being practical." She used it every time she pushed me out of something that should have included me. And for 15 years, I let her. Here's the truth about being invisible inside your own family. It gives you space, privacy, the kind no one questions. After graduating summa cum laude in finance, I joined Apex Strategic Advisory, a boutique consulting firm in downtown San Diego. Within 3 years, I was leading client engagements. Within 7, I was a senior strategy consultant managing restructuring projects for companies generating over $200 million in revenue. By the time I left, my total compensation, salary plus bonuses, was around $340,000 a year. Vanessa never knew. She never asked. At family dinners, the few I was still invited to, she would wave her hand dismissively whenever my work came up. "Bianca does something with spreadsheets." Then she would turn to Chloe. "Tell them about your new campaign, sweetheart. Chloe's the successful one." I let her believe that. I let all of them believe it. Starting in 2013, I invested everything I didn't spend. Index funds, rental properties, a duplex in Carlsbad, a townhouse near the University District. I lived quietly, drove an older car, wore simple clothes to family holidays, while Vanessa showed up wearing a new piece of designer jewelry every year. By March 2025, my net worth had reached approximately $5.6 million. Not a single person in my family knew. The only one who did was Adrian Cole, my attorney since 2019, a sharp, methodical specialist in real estate law and financial fraud. It was Adrian who first noticed something was off. While reviewing my father's property records for an unrelated matter, he flagged a document tied to a home in Del Mar. "There's a transfer deed here," he told me, "and Darren's signature doesn't look right. I'm saving a notarized copy just in case." I thanked him, filed it away. I wasn't ready to fight, not yet. By February 2025, my body made the decision my mind had been avoiding for years. I stopped sleeping. Not the kind people joke about. Not "I only got a few hours." I mean entire nights. Lying awake, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts looping through client work, projections, risk models, over and over until my chest felt tight, like something heavy was pressing down on it, and it wouldn't let go. My doctor, Dr. Hannah Weiss, a direct, no-nonsense internist, sat me down after reviewing my blood work. My cortisol levels, she said, were dangerously high. Then she looked me in the eye and told me to take at least 6 months off. No discussion, no compromise. I submitted my resignation on February 28th. My managing partner, Jonathan Pierce, shook my hand and said, "The door's always open when you're ready, Bianca." I walked out of that office with a single box in my arms, and for the first time in 10 years, I had no plan, no next step, just silence. And then I thought about my mother. She used to dream about a small house by the ocean. Nothing extravagant, just a porch, the sound of waves, and a place where she could finally breathe. She always said she'd buy it when she retired. She never got the chance. I found the listing on a Thursday afternoon, La Jolla, 20 minutes from downtown San Diego. 6 bedrooms, white exterior, a wraparound terrace overlooking the Pacific, just over 4,000 square feet, listed at $5.6 million. I called Adrian. I called my mortgage broker. I wired the 20% down payment, $1. $12 million. On March 5th, closed on March 21st, and moved in the very next day. That first night, I sat alone on the porch with a glass of wine, listening to the waves roll in and break against the shore. And for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I didn't tell my family, but Chloe saw me. A mutual friend had posted an Instagram story from La Jolla, and I was in the background. Chloe recognized me instantly. She told Vanessa. And that same night, my phone rang. 11:47 p.m. Vanessa's name lit up the screen. I hadn't answered one of her calls in months. But something about that night, the house, the ocean, the quiet hope that maybe things could be different, made me pick up. "Chloe told me about your little beach house," Vanessa said. No greeting, no congratulations, just that sharp, controlled tone she used when rearranging spaces, or people. "How lovely. Anyway, your father and I have been needing a change. The city's exhausting. We're moving in tomorrow." I didn't respond right away, so she continued. "We'll take the master bedroom, obviously. Chloe gets the ocean view. You can use one of the smaller rooms in the back. It's not ideal, but you've always been fine with less." My fingers tightened around the porch railing. "Did Dad actually say that? Can I speak to him?" "He's asleep. Don't wake him. You know how his heart is. And honestly, Bianca, if you don't like it, you can find somewhere else. It's not like you can't afford a motel." My hands were shaking. My jaw locked so tight it hurt. But when I spoke, my voice came out calm, almost polite. "Of course, Vanessa. I'll make sure everything is ready for you." She hung up without a goodbye. She never said goodbye. I sat there in the dark for 20 minutes, staring out at the ocean. I couldn't even focus on the waves anymore. Then I picked up my phone and called my father. 12:15 a.m. He answered on the second ring, fully awake. "Sweetheart," he said. "I never said any of that. Vanessa told me you invited us down for the weekend." That's when everything clicked. The same way it must have clicked for Adrian months earlier when he noticed a signature that didn't match. If Vanessa could fabricate my father's words that easily, forging his name on paper wouldn't be difficult at all. I didn't sleep that night, but for the first time in 15 years, I wasn't hurt. I was clear. At 7 a.m., I called Adrian Cole. "The notarized copy of the Del Mar transfer deed," I said, "the one with the signature that didn't look right. I need it today." He didn't ask questions. He knew me well enough to recognize the shift. By 9:30, the documents were in my encrypted inbox. A scanned transfer deed dated April 12, 2024. It showed my father's home in Del Mar, valued at $1.6 million, being transferred to a company called Crow Holdings Group LLC. I had never heard of it, and I was absolutely certain neither had my father. I pulled up the California Business Registry. Crow Holdings Group LLC had been registered in November 2022. Sole owner, Vanessa R. Crow. No partners, no oversight, no transparency. Then I did what 12 years in consulting had trained me to do. I compared signatures. I took Darren Riley's signature from the deed and placed it next to his signature on his will, his medical power of attorney, and even a birthday card he'd sent me the year before. The differences were obvious. The capital D lacked its natural curve. The pressure was inconsistent, too heavy at the start, too light at the end. It wasn't writing, it was imitation. Adrian confirmed it immediately. "This isn't a bad day," he said. "This is a simulated forgery, but we'll need a certified expert to make it hold legally." He recommended Dr. Evelyn Hart, a forensic document examiner with federal court experience. If she confirmed it, it would be undeniable. Then he paused. "There's more," he added. "I found 3 withdrawals from Darren's retirement account. Total, $420,000. They were transferred into an account at Pacific Crest Bank under the name V. Crow. We'll need a subpoena to get the full records." I stared at the screen. This wasn't family tension anymore. This was criminal. They arrived at 10 o'clock the next morning. 2 black SUVs pulled into the driveway, packed with luggage, decorative boxes, and what looked like an entire luxury linen collection. Vanessa stepped out first, sunglasses perched on her head, scanning the property like she was evaluating an investment. "Not bad," she said, "for a starter home." A starter home, over 4,000 square feet, $5.6 million. She walked straight inside and claimed the master bedroom without hesitation, like she already owned the place. Within an hour, my clothes were piled in the hallway, and her wardrobe filled my closet. She had done this before, and every time, people chose silence over confrontation. Chloe took the ocean view room. I was moved to the smallest room in the house, a space originally designed for storage, in my own home. My father followed them in quietly, carrying a single duffel bag. He looked out of place, like someone who had stepped into a life that didn't belong to him. He caught my eye in the hallway and mouthed, "I'm sorry." I gave a small shake of my head. "Not yet." That night, Vanessa invited 3 couples over for dinner. No notice, no discussion. She used the groceries I had bought and walked them through the house as if she were hosting a private showing. "This is our place now," she said, gesturing across the kitchen with a polished smile, like a host presenting a prize. And I stood there, watching her tell my story as if it had always been hers. "Darren always wanted a beach house," Vanessa said with a bright, effortless smile. "So I made it happen. Not a single person at that table knew the house belonged to me. Not one of them asked. I stood at the sink, washing dishes, smiling when spoken to, playing along. At 9:47 p.m., my phone vibrated. An email from Adrian. Dr. Evelyn Hart had completed her preliminary analysis. Her conclusion was clear. The signature on the Del Mar transfer deed was highly likely to be a simulated forgery. I dried the last plate, placed it carefully on the rack, and walked back to my small room. At 11 p.m., when the house had finally gone quiet, another email came through. Subject line: "Call me first thing tomorrow. This is bigger than we thought." I didn't reply. At 6:45 the next morning, I slipped out the back door and walked down to the beach. The tide was low, the sand still damp beneath my feet. I stopped near the waterline, where the sound of the waves would swallow my voice, and called Adrian. The retirement withdrawals were just the beginning, he said. She also opened a supplemental credit line under Darren's name, used his social security number, his credit history. She listed herself as an authorized user. Current balance, $62,000. Charges include a luxury spa resort in Palm Springs, 2 designer handbags, and a first-class flight to New York. None of it was approved by Darren. I closed my eyes as the ocean roared in front of me. And there's another account, he continued. A savings account labeled V. Crow Trust, same bank, balance $290,000. The funds came from their joint household account, categorized as routine expenses. I stood there, waves brushing the edge of my shoes, and did the math in my head. The numbers matched what we had already uncovered, and this time I understood what they meant. Taken from my father without his knowledge, while he was recovering from a heart condition, while he trusted her to manage everything. That afternoon, Dr. Hart finalized her report. Her conclusion was definitive. The signature on the April 12th transfer deed was a simulated forgery, confirmed at the highest level of certainty recognized in forensic analysis. Adrian didn't soften it. We're looking at first-degree forgery and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, he said. Both are felony charges under California law. What do you want to do? He asked. If I reported it immediately, Vanessa would be arrested. My father would be blindsided, and by the end of the day, the entire city would know. And if there's another way? I asked. There was a pause on the line. Then Adrian said, The California Legal Foundation Gala is on June 14th. Vanessa is being honored as Philanthropist of the Year. If any of that stolen money went into her foundation, then that award is built on fraud. He let that sit for a moment. You want this to end quietly in a courtroom? Or publicly, on the stage she built for herself? I already knew my answer. 83 days. That's how long I had between March 23rd and June 14th. That night, I mapped everything out. Phase 1, March through April. Gather every piece of evidence. Build a file strong enough to stand in front of a judge, a journalist, or a room full of attorneys. Phase 2, May. Protect my father. Move his financial oversight to an independent fiduciary. Stabilize his health. Prepare him for what was coming. Phase 3, the first 2 weeks of June. Orchestrate the reveal at the one event Vanessa cared about more than anything. Adrian filed the subpoena request with the county court on March 28th. Estimated processing time, 30 to 45 days. Dr. Hart continued her full forensic analysis. Everything was moving. But I needed one more person, someone Vanessa couldn't dismiss, someone whose voice would carry beyond a single night. I called Margaret Doyle. Margaret was 52, a senior editor at California Elite Review, the publication that covered every major gala, fundraiser, and society event in San Diego. More importantly, she had been my mother's college roommate. They had stayed close until the very end. Margaret was one of the last people to sit with my mother before she passed. When I told her what I had found, she went quiet. For a long time. Then she said, I've had doubts about Vanessa for years. She donates heavily, but no one ever sees the numbers. Every time I tried to push an audit story, it got shut down. Too many advertisers tied to her circle. Margaret agreed to attend the gala as accredited press. If the evidence held, she would publish a full investigative feature in California Elite Review, a magazine read by over 80,000 of the city's most influential people. She had one condition. Every document gets independently verified before I print a single word. I wouldn't accept anything less, I told her. Living in that house with Vanessa during those weeks felt like sharing a space with someone who didn't realize the walls were already closing in. April settled in. And so did she. She changed the locks on the master bedroom, my bedroom, without asking. She hired a designer to redo the living room in what she called coastal elegance. new pillows, a reclaimed wood coffee table, a $6,500 linen sectional. The invoice, $12,000, arrived in my mailbox with a handwritten note. Bianca, take care of this. I paid it. I needed her comfortable. I needed her careless. Every Friday, she hosted what she called sunset socials. 5 or 6 couples from her social circle, drinking my wine on my porch, listening as Vanessa narrated a life she had never built. One evening, I overheard her telling a woman wrapped in cashmere, "Bianca's just going through a phase. She quit her little job and now she's living off savings. We're here to keep an eye on her, really." I stood there quietly, listening, and letting her believe every word she was saying was still true. The woman looked at me with quiet pity. I refilled her glass without saying a word. Later that evening, my father pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Are you okay, sweetheart? Vanessa says you've been stressed, that you're not handling the career change well." "I'm fine, Dad, better than fine." He searched my face for a moment but didn't press further. Darren Riley had spent most of his life trusting the wrong people to define the truth about the people he loved. One afternoon, while Vanessa was out at a spa appointment, I picked up the iPad she'd left on the kitchen counter. Her browser was still open. The most recent search: how to add name to property deed, California. That's when it became undeniable. She wasn't just staying. She was planning to take ownership of my house. That evening, Adrian called. "The subpoena's been approved. We'll have the bank statements in about 2 weeks." He paused. "But Bianca, there's another account we haven't seen yet." The records from Pacific Crest Bank arrived at his office on the first Monday of May, sealed and marked confidential under court order. He called me at noon. I was sitting in my car in a public parking lot in La Jolla, the only place I could be certain Vanessa wouldn't overhear. "The V. Crow account lines up with what we expected," Adrian said. $420,000 from Darren's retirement fund, transferred in 4 installments between January and October 2024. The credit line we already discussed, $62,000. "You said there was another account." "There is. A savings account titled V. Crow Trust. Current balance, $290,000. Every dollar transferred from their joint household account, labeled as routine expenses, groceries, maintenance, utilities. Except it all went into this separate account." I stared through the windshield as the wind bent the coastal grass in slow, steady waves. The numbers lined up in my head. The Del Mar property, $1.6 million. The retirement account, $420,000. The credit line, $62,000. The trust account, $290,000. Total, approximately $2.37 million, taken from my father without his knowledge, while he was recovering, while he trusted her completely. Adrian let the number sit between us. "If I tell him now," I said slowly, "he'll confront her. He won't be able to stop himself. And that could destroy everything we're building. Or worse, affect his health." "I know," Adrian said, "but he has to hear it before the gala. He needs to stand on that stage knowing the truth. And he needs to sign an affidavit confirming he never authorized any of it." We chose June 1st, 13 days before the gala, early enough for him to prepare, late enough that Vanessa wouldn't have time to create a counterstory. That same week, Dr. Evelyn Hart sent an addendum to her report. The handwriting in the forged deed matched the handwriting on the fraudulent credit application. Same patterns, same pressure, same hand, same crime. June 1st, a Sunday. I woke before sunrise and watched the sky shift from dark gray to pale gold through the small window of my room. Vanessa wouldn't be awake until later. She never woke early on weekends. I had a window. I found my father already on the porch at 5:45 a.m., sitting with a cup of coffee, watching the waves roll in. "Walk with me," I said. We made our way down to the beach. The sand was cool beneath our feet. I waited until we were far enough from the house that no voice could carry back. Then I opened the folder. I showed him everything. The transfer deed, the forensic report, the bank statements, all 3 accounts, The registration for Crow Holdings Group LLC filed under Vanessa's name. I laid it out the way I would present a case to a client. Facts first, implications second, questions last. He read every page. His hands trembled. A vein in his temple pulsed visibly. We stood there in silence, the sound of the ocean filling the space between us. "I didn't sign this," he said finally, his voice low. "I've never even heard of this company. I didn't approve any of these transfers." He covered his face with his hands. When he lowered them, his eyes were red. "I'm sorry, Bianca. I should have protected you." "You didn't know, Dad. She made sure you didn't." He agreed to everything. The affidavit, the plan, the silence, until June 14th. Adrian notarized his sworn statement 2 days later with a certified witness present. As we walked back toward the house that morning, my father stopped at the base of the boardwalk. He pulled me into a hug, the first one in years, and whispered so quietly I almost didn't hear it. "Your mother would be proud of you." I didn't know then that her voice would find me again before all of this was over, in a way I never could have expected. 13 days. Vanessa spent every one of them preparing for what she believed would be the defining night of her life. She hired a personal stylist, $3,500 for a single session. She ordered a custom champagne-colored gown from a boutique in downtown San Diego, $8,200, fitted twice, perfect down to the last detail. Every evening after dinner, she stood in front of the mirror in the master bedroom, my bedroom, and rehearsed her acceptance speech, moving her hands with the ease of someone who had spent years performing generosity. On June 8th, she told me I was expected to attend. "You'll sit in the back, of course, but I need the family there. It looks better in photos." She paused, then added, "Wear something simple. This isn't your night." "Of course," I said. "I wouldn't dream of taking your spotlight." Behind the scenes, everything was moving. Adrian finalized the evidence file. My father's affidavit, Dr. Hart's forensic report, full bank statements, the Crow Holdings registration, and a record of Vanessa's browser history from the iPad, originals, verified, sealed inside a manila envelope. On June 10th, Adrian met with the California Legal Foundation's Ethics Committee, the group responsible for reviewing nominee conduct ahead of the gala. He presented the full evidence file, my father's affidavit, Dr. Hart's forensic report, and the verified financial records. The committee reviewed the materials for nearly an hour, asking a series of precise, controlled questions before reaching a decision. "This is serious," one of the board members said. "Under Section 7.3, any substantiated financial misconduct must be addressed before an award is given. The committee will take appropriate action." Vanessa had no idea. She was too busy choosing between diamond studs and chandelier earrings. On June 12th, she caught me on the phone in the garden. "Who was that?" she asked. "The spa," I said calmly. "Booking a blowout for the gala." She looked me over carefully. "Don't overdo it. That night is mine." Then, the evening before the gala, June 13th, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I know Vanessa isn't who you think she is. Meet me at Seaport Village, 3 p.m. tomorrow. CB." I stared at those initials long after the screen went dark. I almost ignored it. The gala was hours away. The last thing I needed was a distraction from someone I didn't know. But something about the certainty in that message, the way it was written, told me this wasn't random. This was someone who had been waiting to speak. Seaport Village, 3 p.m. The next afternoon, the sun was harsh, the kind of California heat that makes the air shimmer above the pavement. I sat on a bench overlooking the water and watched as a woman approached. Tall, silver hair, early 60s, dressed in a pressed linen blazer despite the heat. She walked with controlled calm, like someone who had rehearsed this moment. "Bianca Riley," she extended her hand. "My name is Caroline Briggs," she said. "CB." She sat down beside me and began telling me a story I had never heard. One Vanessa had buried so deeply, it barely existed anymore. Before Darren, before San Diego. Before the Crow Riley Foundation and the polished image of generosity she had built, Vanessa had been married to a man named Thomas Briggs, a successful dentist in Santa Barbara. They married in 2005. By 2009, the marriage was over. Thomas had discovered that Vanessa had quietly moved $210,000 from their joint accounts into a private savings account under her maiden name. He never pressed charges. Caroline told me he wanted a clean break. No court battles, no headlines, just distance. I honored that for 16 years, she said. But then I saw your name, Bianca Riley, in an article Margaret Doyle published, something about women in consulting, and I recognized it, Darren Riley's daughter. She turned to face me fully. Vanessa has a pattern. She finds successful men who trust easily, takes control of their finances, and drains them. Your father isn't her first victim. She handed me a folder. Inside was a certified copy of the divorce ruling. Briggs versus Crow, 2009. One phrase highlighted in yellow. Dissipation of marital assets. 2 marriages, 2 men. The same method. 16 years apart. I stayed silent because I was embarrassed, Caroline said quietly. But if I can help your father now, I will. I thanked her, and before I even reached my car, I was already on the phone with Adrian. That night, June 13th, settled over the house like a held breath. Vanessa was in the master bedroom, rehearsing her speech one final time. Through the door, I could hear her voice. Measured, polished, perfectly humble. In the next room, Chloe stood in front of the mirror, trying on jewelry, holding earrings up to the light, completely unaware that by this time tomorrow, everything her mother had built would be unraveling in front of an entire ballroom. At 10 p.m., my father knocked on my door. His face looked tired, but his eyes were steady, clear in a way I hadn't seen in years. He held a small wooden box, dark walnut, brass clasp, slightly worn. I found this, he said softly, in the locked drawer in Vanessa's nightstand. She was at the spa. I wasn't looking for it, I was looking for my glasses. He opened the box. Inside were 2 folded pages, yellowed at the edges. I recognized the handwriting immediately, my mother's, the way she curved her letters, the way she crossed her T's with that slight upward lift, like every sentence carried hope inside it. The letter was dated 3 days before she died. Bianca, my brave girl, you don't need permission to live your life. You are enough. You have always been enough. Don't ever let anyone make you forget that. Vanessa had hidden it. 17 years. My mother's final words to me, locked away in a drawer, inside the room of the woman who had spent 15 years convincing me I was nothing. My father and I sat there in silence, then we cried. No words, just years of everything we hadn't said. When I could finally breathe again, I folded the letter carefully and placed it into my purse, the one I would carry the next day. I won't let her down, I said quietly. Before going to bed, I passed by the hallway leading to the porch. Vanessa stood there, silhouetted against the moonlit ocean, phone pressed to her ear. I stopped. Her voice carried through the screen door. Don't worry, after the gala, I'll have them transfer the deed. She won't even realize it until it's done. She was talking about my house, the house I had spent 12 years building. And she was planning to take it the moment she received her award. I went to bed, set my alarm for 6 a.m., and for the first time in 83 days, I slept. June 14th, 2025. The morning was clear and still, the kind of Southern California day where everything looks sharper than it should. At 8 a.m., I was sitting across from Adrian Cole in his glass-walled office in downtown San Diego. The manila envelope lay between us on the desk like something dangerous. We reviewed everything one last time. The forged transfer deed, along with Dr. Hart's forensic report. The Pacific Crest Bank statements for all 3 accounts. My father's notarized affidavit, signed June 3rd. The Crow Holdings Group, LLC registration. The Briggs versus Crow divorce ruling from 2009. And a screenshot of Vanessa's browser history, how to add a name to a property deed in California. Timestamped, verified. Caroline Briggs confirmed this morning, Adrian said. She's attending. Table 12 with Margaret Doyle. She's ready. At 10 a.m., Adrian met with the Foundation's Ethics Committee for a final review of the evidence. The Gala committee had already been notified. The Philanthropist of the Year award would be paused pending a serious matter concerning the nominee. The decision wasn't easy, but it was unanimous. No one in that room wanted their reputation tied to unexamined fraud. Meanwhile, Vanessa spent the morning completely unaware. She stepped out at 2 p.m. in her champagne-colored gown, her hair styled perfectly, a diamond pendant catching the light as she moved. She looked at me in my simple black dress and pearls with quiet disdain. "At least try to look like you belong there, Bianca." I held her gaze. "Don't worry," I said calmly. "Tonight, everyone will know exactly where I belong." She frowned slightly, just for a second, then turned back to the mirror. She thought she was walking into her moment. She had no idea what was waiting for her. The grand ballroom of the Fairmont Grand Del Mar was designed to do one thing exceptionally well: make ordinary people feel elevated and powerful people feel untouchable. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead like suspended constellations. Floor-to-ceiling windows were dressed in soft ivory drapery. Round tables gleamed with fine china and polished silver, each centered with white peonies and candlelight that flickered just enough to feel intentional. 220 guests. Attorneys, judges, state officials, nonprofit founders, real estate magnates, and the social writers who turned their lives into headlines: black tie, perfect posture, controlled smiles. In a room like that, reputation wasn't just valuable, it was survival. Vanessa moved through the crowd as if the entire evening had been built around her. She greeted people with effortless warmth, kissed cheeks, clasped hands, leaned in just close enough to make every interaction feel personal. At one point, I watched her rest her hand lightly on Judge Carter's arm and say, with practiced sincerity, "I'm truly honored, William. I mean that." She took her seat at table 1, the VIP table, directly facing the stage. My father sat beside her, shoulders tight, his glass untouched. He hadn't looked at her once since they arrived. She didn't notice. I was seated at table 18 near the back, close to the service entrance, the seat Vanessa had chosen for me. Adrian sat to my left, his briefcase tucked neatly beneath his chair. At table 12, I saw Caroline Briggs, silver hair, linen blazer, watching the room with quiet patience, like someone who had waited a long time for this moment. Across the room, in the press section, Margaret Doyle adjusted her recorder and opened a fresh page in her notebook. At 8:30, the Master of Ceremonies tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed with the evening's awards, the association has a brief announcement." Vanessa straightened immediately. She smoothed her gown. That same polished, camera-ready smile settled perfectly into place, the one she had rehearsed for weeks. Then Judge William Carter stood, walked to the podium, and spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, I regret to inform you that we have received information that must be addressed before we continue tonight." 220 heads turned toward the stage. Vanessa's smile held, for a moment. But I saw her fingers tighten around the edge of her napkin. Judge Carter's voice carried across the room, steady, controlled, the voice of a man who had spent decades delivering decisions that changed lives. Under Section 7(3) of our bylaws, any substantiated allegation of financial misconduct involving a nominee must be reviewed before an award is granted. This evening, we have received a formally documented complaint supported by forensic evidence, sworn statements, and independently verified financial records. He paused. The complaint was filed by a member of the nominee's own family. A ripple moved through the room. Quiet, controlled, but unmistakable. 220 people adjusting, recalculating, sensing something shift beneath the surface. Vanessa stood before he finished. "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice carefully balanced between shock and offense. "William, who filed this? This is a charity event, not a courtroom." Judge Carter turned his head and looked directly at me. "Miss Bianca Riley, you've been invited to present your evidence." The room changed. It didn't happen loudly, but you could feel it. Conversations stopped, heads turned, attention locked. Vanessa's eyes found me at table 18, the very place she had put me. And for one long, suspended moment, we looked at each other across 17 tables, 220 witnesses, and 15 years of silence. I stood. I picked up the manila envelope, and I walked. 17 tables, every step measured, every step echoing softly against the polished floor. I could feel every pair of eyes following me, the quiet rustle of gowns as people shifted in their seats, the soft clink of glass. Someone inhaled too sharply. "Darren!" Vanessa's voice cut through the room, sharp and cracking. "Say something! She's trying to destroy me!" My father didn't move. His hands rested calmly on the table. He didn't look at her. I stepped onto the stage. 220 faces looked up at me. The chandelier light was warm, but unforgiving. I placed the envelope on the podium, leaned toward the microphone, and took a slow breath. "I didn't come here to tear anyone down," I said. "I came because the truth couldn't wait any longer." I opened the envelope and pulled out the first document. On April 12, 2024, a transfer deed was filed in California, transferring ownership of the Riley family home in Del Mar, valued at $1.6 million, to a company named Crow Holdings Group, LLC. I held it up. Behind me, the screen lit up with the scanned document, the official seal, the legal description, and at the bottom, a signature, Darren Riley. "This signature is not my father's." The next image appeared, side by side. On one side, the deed. On the other, my father's verified signatures, from his will, his medical documents, and his sworn affidavit, dated June 3rd. Even from the back of the room, the differences were visible. The missing curve in the initial, the uneven pressure, the rigid, unnatural strokes of someone copying, not writing. This analysis was conducted by Dr. Evelyn Hart, a certified forensic document examiner with federal court experience, I continued. Her conclusion, documented in Report EH-2025-087, is that the signature is a simulated forgery at the highest level of certainty recognized in the field. The room went completely still. Not the polite silence of a formal event. It was heavy, suffocating. The kind of silence that settles when an entire room realizes something irreversible has just happened. My father stood up from table 1. His voice, when it came, was rough, but steady. "I did not sign that document. I have never heard of that company, and I did not authorize the transfer of my home." Vanessa's hand tightened around the edge of the table. "Darren," she said sharply, "tell them you signed it. Tell them." For the first time that night, he looked at her, and then, slowly, he shook his head. Somewhere in the room, a fork touched porcelain, a small sound, but in that silence, it landed like a verdict. I reached into the envelope and pulled out the next set of documents. "Between January and October of 2024, I said, 4 withdrawals totaling $420,000 were taken from Darren Riley's retirement account and transferred into a savings account at Pacific Crest Bank." The screen changed. Redacted bank statements filled the projection. Dates, amounts, transaction paths. "The account is registered under the name V. Crow." A chair scraped somewhere behind me. A whisper moved across one of the tables. "Additionally," I continued, "a supplemental credit line was opened using Darren Riley's Social Security number without his knowledge or consent. Current balance, $62,000. Charges include luxury travel, designer purchases, and private spa retreats. None of these transactions appear in my father's records." The next slide. A separate account titled V. Crow Trust contains $290,000. These funds were transferred from a joint household account and categorized as routine expenses, groceries, utilities, maintenance, but were instead redirected into this private account. I placed the documents on the podium. The total amount taken from my father without his knowledge or authorization is approximately $2.37 million. I let the number sit. Under California law, this constitutes financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. My father is 63 years old, with a documented cardiac condition. I paused. "This is a felony." Vanessa turned toward the room. The tears came instantly, precise, controlled, almost perfect. They slid down her cheeks, the same cheeks that had never once shown real emotion in 15 years. "She's lying," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. "Darren gave me access to everything." "This is a misunderstanding, a family issue. How dare you turn a charity event into a public accusation?" Judge Carter spoke from his seat, his tone level and final. "Ms. Crow, the evidence has been independently verified. The association is revoking the Philanthropist of the Year award effective immediately." Vanessa's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then, from table 12, a woman stood, Caroline Briggs. She rose calmly, with the quiet certainty of someone who had waited years to be heard. "My name is Caroline Briggs," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. "Vanessa Crow was previously married to my ex-husband, Thomas Briggs, a dentist in Santa Barbara. They were married in 2005. The marriage ended in 2009 after he discovered that Vanessa had transferred $210,000 from their joint accounts into a personal account under her maiden name." She held up a document. "This is a certified copy of the divorce ruling, Briggs v. Crow, 2009. It explicitly cites dissipation of marital assets." She handed it forward. Judge Carter accepted it without a word. The room broke. What had been contained whispers turned into a wave of voices. Conversations sparked at every table. Shock, recognition, calculation. At table 7, a woman covered her mouth. At table 3, two attorneys leaned toward each other, their expressions shifting into something I knew well. The look of people who had just realized they had underestimated the situation. Vanessa stood frozen between the table and the aisle, her gown catching the light, her composure unraveling piece by piece. Chloe sat beside her, tears streaming down her face, hands clenched tightly in her lap. She didn't look at her mother. She stared at the table. My father stepped away from his seat. He walked toward the stage, climbed the steps, and stood beside me. He didn't reach for the microphone. He didn't need to. Darren Riley, standing next to his daughter, facing that room, said everything without speaking a single word. Vanessa looked at us. Then she looked around the room, at the same faces that had admired her just minutes ago. Not one of them met her eyes. She picked up her clutch, turned, and walked toward the exit. The sound of her heels echoed sharply across the marble floor, each step louder than the last. The doors closed behind her. No one followed. For a moment, the room held still again. Then Judge Carter returned to the podium. "The Philanthropist of the Year award for 2025 will not be presented this evening," he said. "The California Legal Foundation will initiate a full audit of all donations associated with the Crow-Riley Foundation. We ask for your discretion as this matter proceeds through the appropriate legal channels." The room seemed to breathe again. What happened next? I didn't expect. A man from table 3 stood up. Tall, silver at the temples, the kind of presence that didn't ask for attention, it assumed it. He walked straight toward me. William Carter, founding partner of Carter & Hale, one of the most respected litigation firms in California. He reached out and shook my hand. "You laid that out more clearly than half the attorneys I've hired in 20 years, he said. "If your father needs representation, for the divorce or the criminal case, call me. No charge." He pressed his card into my hand. Behind him, in the press section, Margaret Doyle met my eyes. She gave a single small nod, the kind that said, "It's done." I stepped back to the microphone one last time. The room quieted again. "I didn't come here tonight to tear anyone down," I said. "I came because my father deserved the truth, because silence isn't loyalty, it's surrender, and because no one should have to trade their dignity just to keep the illusion of a happy family." The first applause came from table 12. Caroline, steady, certain. Then it spread. Not loud, not explosive, but deliberate. The sound of 220 people offering something far more meaningful than approval. Respect. My father took my arm as we stepped down from the stage. His grip was steady, His eyes were clear, and for the first time in 15 years, we walked out of a room together. The drive back to La Jolla took just over 20 minutes. For most of it, he said nothing. Then, halfway across the bridge, with the dark ocean stretching out on both sides, he spoke. "I'm filing for divorce on Monday." I didn't argue. I didn't try to comfort him. I just reached over and squeezed his hand. When we pulled into the driveway, the house was quiet. Vanessa's things were still there. Garment bags, monogrammed towels, decorative pieces she had chosen like she owned the place. But she was gone. Apparently, she had left from the hotel. I didn't ask where. I didn't care. My father's phone buzzed constantly that night, messages coming in between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. I could hear the vibration through the wall. He showed them to me the next morning. "Darren, please, I can explain. Don't do this to our family." Then, "You're making a mistake." And then, "This is Bianca's fault. She manipulated you." The last message came at 1:47 a.m. "You'll regret this." Chloe called me later that night. She was crying, really crying, not controlled, not careful. The kind that strips everything down to what's real. "Why did you do this?" she asked. "She's my mother." "I know," I said quietly. "And I'm sorry you're hurting. But she stole over $2 million from Dad. She forged his name, and she was planning to take my house next. I didn't have another choice." There was silence on the line. Then, barely above a whisper, "I know." After we hung up, I sat alone on the porch. The ocean sounded louder at night. Or maybe I was finally quiet enough to hear it. I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty, like something that had been inside me for years had finally been pulled out. It hurt, but I could breathe. My father came outside and sat beside me. He placed my mother's letter gently between us. "Keep it," he said. "It was always yours." Vanessa's final message, "You'll regret this," wasn't just anger, it was strategy. By 9 a.m. the next morning, a local outlet, California Daily Buzz, published a headline that made my stomach tighten. "Prominent philanthropist claims stepdaughter staged public humiliation at charity gala." The article was almost entirely Vanessa's voice. Tears, trembling tone. A perfectly crafted narrative. She called me unstable. She described the gala as a calculated attack by a jealous stepdaughter who had never accepted her. She said my father was confused, influenced. The comment section divided instantly. That poor woman was blindsided. Family matters should stay private. Bianca Riley should be ashamed. I sat at the kitchen counter reading every word, and something familiar crept back in. That old instinct. The one that whispered maybe I had gone too far, maybe I should have handled it differently, maybe I should apologize. I called Adrian. He didn't even let me finish. "Don't respond, don't post, don't call anyone," he said. "Margaret's article goes live tonight. The facts will speak for themselves." That afternoon, 2 emails came in, both from women who had sat at my table, drank my wine, smiled in my house. One wrote, "You should be ashamed. Vanessa has done more for this community than you ever will." The other said, "Karma is real, Bianca." I stared at that word, karma, and I thought about everything Vanessa had done. Forging my father's name, draining his accounts, hiding my mother's final letter for 17 years. And still, half the world was ready to defend her. Have you ever known, deep down, that you did the right thing and still felt like the villain? If you have, you understand what that day felt like. Because in that moment, I needed someone, anyone, to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. Then, at exactly 6 p.m., my phone lit up. A notification. California Elite Review. Breaking. Full evidence of financial fraud by Vanessa Crowe Riley. Sources verified. The truth finally caught up. Margaret kept her word. Her article ran just after sunset. 3,400 words of precise, disciplined reporting. No exaggeration. No emotional language. Just facts, laid out one after another, until there was no room left for doubt. She published the forged deed alongside Dr. Hart's forensic analysis. She included the bank statements, routing numbers redacted, but the amounts and account names fully visible. She quoted Judge Carter directly. The evidence presented was sufficient to justify immediate revocation of the award and referral to the appropriate authorities. She built a timeline, clear, methodical. The LLC registration in 2022, the retirement withdrawals throughout 2024, the unauthorized credit line, and beside it all, she placed the Briggs divorce ruling. Like a reflection no one could ignore. The headline alone carried enough weight. The philanthropist who took it all, inside Vanessa Crowe Riley's double life. Within 12 hours, the article reached 143,000 views, over 5,200 shares. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. That father is lucky his daughter saw it in time. California Daily Buzz, the same outlet that had published Vanessa's version that morning, issued a correction before midnight. We regret our earlier one-sided reporting and encourage readers to review the full evidence presented by California Elite Review. The California Legal Foundation released a formal statement the next day. The 2025 Philanthropist of the Year award has been permanently revoked. The Crowe Riley Foundation's partnerships are suspended pending a full financial audit. Within 48 hours, 3 major sponsors, a regional bank, a luxury automotive group, and a hospitality chain, pulled their funding. Total value, $510,000. Vanessa's publicist released a brief statement, Mrs. Crowe Riley denies all allegations and intends to clear her name through the legal process. No one picked it up. The story had already moved beyond her control. On Monday, June 16th, my father walked into San Diego Family Court at 9:10 a.m. Navy suit. Steady expression. The look of someone who had finally woken up after a long time. He filed for divorce. Grounds: fraud within the marriage and financial misconduct. The petition, 14 pages prepared by Adrian, documented every transfer, every account, every forged signature. That same afternoon, Adrian filed a criminal complaint with the county authorities. The charges were specific: forgery in the first degree, financial exploitation, identity fraud, misappropriation of funds, each one a felony, each one carrying consequences measured in years. The investigation opened immediately. Vanessa was ordered to appear within 72 hours. By Wednesday, she had retained Michael Grant, a well-known defense attorney. His first move was predictable: a call to Adrian proposing settlement terms, return the money, close the accounts, drop the charges, end it quietly. Adrian relayed the offer. I didn't hesitate. No settlement, I said. My father deserves the protection of the law, not a private agreement behind closed doors. By the end of that week, Pacific Crest Bank froze both the V. Crowe savings account and the V. Crowe Trust. Total held, $710,000. Locked pending investigation. Chloe called me that Thursday, her second call since the gala. Her voice was softer this time. Can we talk? She asked. Not like this, not as enemies. I never saw you as my enemy, I said. But you have to decide where you stand. I can't make that decision for you. She didn't respond right away. Then quietly, I know. The final number came in on July 3rd. The emergency audit of the Crowe Riley Foundation confirmed what Adrian had suspected from the beginning. It wasn't just personal accounts. $110,000 in charitable funds had been rerouted through internal transfers, masked as operational costs, but ultimately tied to Vanessa's personal expenses. Event invoices that matched private dinners. Administrative fees that aligned with her recurring memberships. A $15,000 consulting payment sent directly to Crowe Holdings Group LLC, the same entity used in the property transfer. Revised total, $2.48 million. That same day, the grand jury issued a formal indictment. 4 felony counts: forgery, financial exploitation, identity fraud, misuse of charitable funds. Vanessa surrendered at the courthouse. She posted $90,000 bail, released under conditions, GPS monitoring, and a court order, No contact with Darren Riley. A restraining order was granted that same afternoon, 200 feet, no exceptions. Margaret followed up with a second article. The San Diego Tribune picked it up. So did several regional outlets. Estimated combined readership, over 600,000. Online, #CrowRileyFraud, trended for nearly 3 days. Vanessa's name, once tied to charity events and society pages, now led to one thing only: the truth. Her attorney briefly suggested a countersuit, defamation. Adrian responded with a single line. Every statement presented was supported by verified evidence and independently reviewed prior to publication. We welcome discovery. The countersuit never materialized. By early July, everything had settled into a strange, quiet aftermath. Not resolution, just stillness. One evening I sat with my father on the porch. The same porch, the same chairs, but everything between us had changed. "Dad," I said, "I love you. I need you to hear that first, because what I'm about to say might not sound like love, but it is." He nodded. He was listening. Not just hearing me, listening. Maybe for the first time in years. "I'm not going back to being the version of myself that made everyone else comfortable," I continued. "For 15 years, I was the quiet one, the easy one, the daughter who never pushed back because I didn't want to cause problems. That version of me is gone. If we're going to have a real relationship, it has to be honest. You tell me the truth, I tell you the truth, and we don't let anyone else rewrite our story." His eyes filled, but he didn't look away. "I'm going to start therapy," he said. "I need to understand how I let this happen. How I let someone come between me and my daughter for 15 years and didn't see it. That's all I'm asking." That night, I sent Chloe an email. Short, direct. "I don't hate you. I never have. But what your mother did wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a crime. If we're going to build anything real between us, it starts with acknowledging that. I'm not asking you to choose sides. I'm asking you to choose honesty." I also made a call I had been avoiding. Dr. Laura Bennett, licensed therapist, specialist in family trauma. My first session was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Because setting boundaries isn't one dramatic moment on a stage. It's a series of quiet decisions you make when no one is watching. And the hardest boundary to hold is the one you set for yourself. The letter came in mid-July. Not a text, not an email. 3 handwritten pages in a cream envelope, no return address. I knew the handwriting instantly. Chloe still dotted her eyes with small circles, the same way she had when she was 14 and I was 21, back when we had almost been something like sisters. Before that was quietly taken away from us. She wrote, "Bianca, I've been crying for 3 weeks. Not because my mother was arrested, but because I finally admitted something I've known for 15 years and never said out loud. I watched her erase you. I watched her take your room, your place at holidays, your spot in family photos. I heard her call you an afterthought in front of people. And I laughed, because it was easier than standing up for you. I was comfortable, and comfort made me complicit. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I haven't earned it. I'm writing because you deserve to hear someone say it. I saw it. It was wrong, and I did nothing. I've started therapy. I want to become someone who tells the truth, even when it costs me something. If you're willing, I'd like to try to know you again, not as stepsisters who tolerate each other, but as 2 people choosing honesty over convenience." I read it twice. The second time I cried. She had included something else too, a truth I hadn't expected. Years ago, Vanessa had told Chloe that I'd inherited a large sum from my mother and refused to share it with the family. "That's why she keeps her distance," Vanessa had said. "She thinks she's better than us." None of it was real. My mother hadn't left money. She left a letter, and even that had been taken from me. I wrote back, "I appreciate your honesty. Let's take this slowly." We met at a cafe in La Jolla at the end of July. We talked for 3 hours. It wasn't easy. It wasn't smooth. but it was the most honest conversation I had ever had with someone who shared my last name. December 2025, 6 months later. I'm sitting on the porch again, the same place where everything began. Same chair, same ocean, same glass of wine. The waves sound the same. The air feels the same. But I'm not the same person who sat here that first night in March. My father now lives in the guest house, just steps away. He finalized the divorce in October. Most of the money was recovered. He goes to therapy every week. His doctor says his health is better than it's been in years. Last Tuesday, he cooked dinner for us. The first time since my mother was alive. It was terrible. I ate all of it. I went back to work, but not where I used to be. I started my own firm, Riley Advisory Group, small office, downtown San Diego. My first clients included William Carter's firm, the same man who walked up to me at the gala and offered help without hesitation. First quarter revenue exceeded projections by 12%. Vanessa's trial is set for March 2026. 4 felony charges. If convicted, she faces years. I don't think about it the way I used to. Chloe visits once a month. We're not close, not yet, but we're honest, and that matters more. Margaret's follow-up article, Bianca Riley, the woman who chose truth over silence, was later featured in a national column. I didn't read it right away. When I finally did, I read it next to my mother's letter, the last thing she ever wrote to me. You are enough, always. Every morning I open that letter. Every morning I sit here and watch the ocean stretch toward the horizon, and every morning I understand something I didn't before. I'm here because I chose to be, not because someone allowed it, not because I stayed quiet long enough to earn it. Because I am enough, I always was. And if there's one thing I want you to take with you from all of this, it's this. The hardest moment isn't when someone betrays you. It's when you finally see it clearly and have to decide whether you're willing to keep tolerating it. I spent years mistaking silence for strength, thinking endurance was the same as loyalty. It's not. Real strength is choosing truth, even when it costs you comfort, relationships, or the version of family you hoped was real. You don't need permission to take up space in your own life. You don't need to earn respect by disappearing. The moment you stop negotiating your worth, everything changes. Not instantly, not perfectly, but permanently. And if this story stayed with you, if even a small part of it felt familiar, take a moment to like the video and share it with someone who might need to hear this too. I read every comment, so tell me honestly, have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and choosing yourself? Your voice matters more than you think, and someone out there might feel less alone because of what you share. And stay with this channel, because sometimes the story you hear next is the one that finally changes something in you.